Hi friends, my name is Purva. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking more about unit tests. I don't know who needs to hear this, but recently I got into a problem where I needed to use the native fetch API call from JavaScript for my problem. Let's look at the very basic minimalistic version of the problem that I was having. So I have a file solution.js where I have post data function. I'm calling another function which is calling fetch. So ideally when I call post data, two fetch functions should be called with the appropriate responses. This is what I'm trying to test with the native fetch API. To save some time, I have written very basic tests which is working. We are going to extend it, so watch until the end. So at first I have imported my solution file, then I have mock global.fetch calls. This is nothing but a jest function, and then I'm mocking the return values. As you can see in my function, I'm calling this fetch API only once. This is why I decided to return the mock value once. You need two functions, JSON and apply. You will see that this test will fail if I don't add this function to the mock. Now, while writing the test, I have called the solution because it's an async function. I have called async await. And then I expect that this global.fetch is called two times. You can see on the left, the screen check means that this works already. Now let's make some changes to our function and update the test accordingly. First, I'm going to call this fetch API multiple times. It is possible you want to fetch the live data, which is available one at a time. So you might be calling it multiple times. I'm just going to take a variable I is equals to 0 and run a loop. Remember, this is a demo sample. You will have a production ready code for your project and you can use a similar functionality, similar test to test your functionality. Now, let's continue writing the code. So while let's say we are calling this API 5 times, and now instead of single input, let's say our API for post expects an array. So I will move this up, make it an array, and then we are going to push this data over here. Let's rename this input to data. Now what will happen? We have an input which is an array. Every time we fetch data, this is going to be saved over here, and then we are going to post this array as JSON to the post API. You see, this fetch data is being called 5 times. So you make appropriate changes to our test file. You can chain mock return value function while mocking your fetch. So here I'm simply going to chain it dot mock return value once because it is called 5 times. So I will copy it 5 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. Now you can make changes to the JSON. We have not added any tests in a code which will check if ID is same or different. So this is still going to work if I'm going to provide the same IDs, but I'm just going to make some changes. I've made the changes in data during mocking our function. We have 5 IDs, and if you look at the post data function, 5 calls to fetch data and 1 call to fetch post. That means this expect global.fetch function should be called 6 times. Let's change this and rerun our test. This should work just fine. So this works just fine. I missed this I++ over here, so it was running continuously. But once I fix this test is successful. One last thing that I wanted to show you is that you can even test with which data these fetch API are being called. For example, we have 6 API calls, out of which first 5 are fetch get and last one is post. I have tested only 5th and 6th, but if you want, you can even test everything. To test this, you need to use to have been nth called with function of expect. Now, nth called with means you have to specify the which number of call that you want to test. In our case, I'm testing 5th and 6th. So 5th one is a fetch API. It is called fetch. In your case, it could be a complete URL. So remember that you need to replace it with a URL. And now because it is a get call, there's no body. The last call that I have, which is 6th number, is a post call. Suppose this is not method, this is the URL. So you need to replace it with the URL that you're calling. And then the body, the headers, and the method. One more thing to remember is that simply because we are dealing with JSONs over here, this works. But if we are using XML and XML parsers, this JSON function is not going to work. You need to replace it with text function because that is what you use with XML parsers while parsing it. So simply mock return value, like you're doing with JSON, instead of JSON, use text, and instead of returning a JSON over here, we are going to simply return an XML. So if it is ID, you will return it like this. And this should work. If it is some other tag for you, you can replace it with appropriate data. But the just it, instead of using JSON, you need to use text and apply function. This is it for the current video. I hope you find it useful. Thanks for watching and don't forget to subscribe to my channel.